All right, with Class B problems, don't forget your formulas. It's always 2 to the x, and that's going to give you the number of networks that are available. 2 to the y minus 2 is going to give you the number of hosts per network. And to figure out the range, we're going to do 2 to the y. And the range, again, is just the space between networks. So in Class B, you'll have stuff like this. They'll give you, you've got 172.30.72.0, and then they give you the subnet mask. They say find the broadcast. So remember, there's more than 2 different ways you can do this, but the 2 ways that I push out are, we can either do the whole thing with the range formula. So let's try that first. So we know it's 2 to the y. And how many, so remember, y is number of zeros in the subnet mask. So if I've got 8 zeros here, and then for 254 in the binary, there's 1 0. So I have 1 0 plus 8 zeros, so a total of 9. So 2 to the 9 equals 512. And then we just take 512, or take 512 divided by 256, because that's the total number of binary bits, and you would get 2. So I have a range of 2. Now you could also do that with the other method, and we could just focus on the octet that we're in, and 256 in binary is 11111110. So there's only 1 0. So if there's 1 0, we could just do 2 to the 1, and that would also give us the range. So our range is going to be 2. So now that we know the range, we can do the range chart. So we know we always start at 0, then we add the range, and then we kind of keep going until eventually we're going to hit some even number like 70. Ugh. And then 72, and then 74, and then our number here is right there, so we can stop. So that's this column, so 73, and 71. So remember, then we add a .0, and then 72.1, and then 73.254, and then .255. So 72 falls in this range. So the broadcast would be 73.255, or 172.30, 73.255. So when you look at these problems, what you want to do is you want to do them in steps. So step 1, figure out what the class is and what the default subnet mask is. So we know this is a Class B. We know the default subnet mask is a /16. So we know how many ones that they've added. They've added 7 ones. Then we want to figure out what they're asking. You know, are they asking for the number of networks? Are they asking for the number of hosts? Or are they asking for something that's going to require a range chart? 9 times out of 10, they're going to ask for something that's going to require a range chart. They're going to ask you what the broadcast is. They're going to ask you what the network ID is. They're going to ask you what the third usable IP address in that range is, something like that. So you're going to have to do a range chart. Now, they use a bunch of different words in there. Sometimes they call it a subnet. Sometimes they call it the network ID. Sometimes they call it the network number. So you'll see a bunch of different things. So I tend to refer to this column as the network ID. Sometimes in Cisco they call this the subnet ID. Other times they just call it the subnet. And I've also seen it as the network number. So you'll see that listed a bunch of times, or a bunch of different ways. All right, let's work out another one. So I got 172.26.144.63, and with the exact same subnet mask, 255.255.254.0. So that obviously comes out to /23. So again, sometimes they'll give you the entire subnet mask. Other times they just give you the / notation, and you got to kind of figure it out yourself. And in this one, they're asking, what subnet does this address belong to? So we know that right away, we're going to be working with this. That's what we're going to be focusing on. So same thing again, you can do it 2 different ways. We can either go the entire formula. We can do 2 to the 9 equals 512, and then 512 divided by 256. Remember, this only works in Class B. So that gives me 2, or I can just focus on just that third octet, and then I can say, hey, that's going to be 11111110. So there's only 1 0, so it's 2 to the 1. So I can either do it in binary on that 1 octet, or I can do the whole thing using the range formula. So in this case, we still get the range of 2. So here the same thing. We start at 0, add the range, Eventually we get to 140, and then 142, 144, and then 146. Once we get to 146, we know this is going to be 145, and this is going to be 143. So remember, in class B, we start out at 0 on the 4th octet. So that's going to be the subnet ID. And then 142.1, 144.1. So we take the first two numbers, 0 and 1. Then we take the last two numbers, 255 and 254 and 255. So this would be 143.254, 145.254.255, 255. So the subnet that I would belong to would be this. So it would be 172.26.144.0. That would be the subnet that I belong to. Remember, so this, again, I tend to call this the network ID. Sometimes Cisco calls it the network, a bunch of different names. But you get the idea.